I've been thinking a lot lately about the topics of selfishness and selflessness. And when I say lately, I mean maybe for the past year or so. The catalyst for this may have been YouTuber Benjamin Smythe. I've mentioned him before, and I usually get a lot out of his particular philosophical outlook on life. But there's one point where I have to differ greatly. And this is not going to be an attack on Ben Smythe. I like Ben Smythe a lot, but I just want to use this as a kind of a jumping off point to go in a different direction. Ben will say things like, life boils down to, I want what I want, sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. And it's like everything is motivated by us as the belief in an actual self that is going around wanting things, sometimes being gratified, sometimes getting frustrated, and that's what life boils down to. I disagree with this very strongly, because there are some rare occasions in life where I believe I have touched something that goes a bit deeper than that. Now let's talk a little bit about the selfish way of living. To be selfish is really to believe wholeheartedly that there is a self that needs to be protected, that needs to dominate other things, that needs to fight for its corner. Now you can understand this because our evolutionary history, I mean, if you really look at what went on in evolution, all organisms had to steal energy from other organisms to survive. So right from the beginning, you're a thief. You have to look after yourself or you die. And even if you're an organism that's able to sustain itself on plant life, you're still destroying other life. Plants and animals are just life, really, when you get right down to it. So, selfishness is at our core. Now, in terms of biological creatures, way back, millions of years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, the reptilian brain was a brain that wasn't capable of a whole lot. It had very basic impulses towards aggression, to fight, to ward off other predators, to kill, to eat, sexual motivation for reproduction, territoriality, ritualistic behavior. As far as I know, the reptilian brain didn't even store memories. That was something that came later. So the brain of mammals is different, but not different in the sense that it's been completely replaced. The reptilian brain is still there, right in the middle, and it is now surrounded by another layer of tissue that we call the limbic brain. And the limbic brain doesn't destroy the reptilian brain. It modifies it. It refines the behavior into more subtle and complex behavior. Chiefly what it does is it gives you the ability to live with a partner or a herd, and allows the storing of memories, allows for the care of offspring and the feelings that, you know, like reptilians, they didn't take care of their young. You have to have the mammalian brain, the limbic brain, to feel that kind of affection for your own offspring. So, one of the things that's happening there is behavior has become less selfish. If you have to take care of young, you know, even in the animal kingdom, a parent might risk its own life to protect its young. That's not selfish behavior in the strictest definition of the word selfish. That's selfless, throwing caution to the wind to protect your own offspring. Now, let's take it another stage further. Humans. We now have another layer of brain tissue on top of the limbic called the neocortical brain. And this allows for complex communication, planning, strategizing, complicated thinking, and also altruism. So, we are capable of selflessness. But are we capable of complete selflessness? No. Why? Because you're still basically an organism living in a hostile universe that has to kill other life to survive. Again, that life may be purely plants, but it's still life. You have to take energy from other forms of life to survive. So you are at root a selfish being. You're a selfish being that's capable of being selfless in certain circumstances. So I'm talking about this because I recognize there's a lot of selfishness in me. But there are those occasions when I've done something selfless for another human being, and it provokes a kind of feeling in you of great well-being. I remember one time way back when I was a Christian, I was attending a very large church at the time, and there was this one girl that I knew who had a difficult family situation, and it was the time of the year when people were signing up for the Christmas dinner, and I realized that she wasn't going to get to go because her parents weren't going to bother paying any attention to her, and they weren't going to help her out with the money. And I also noticed that nobody else was paying any attention. Not that it was their responsibility, but I was in a position, right, where I knew I could step in and help. I could fix it so that she could go to the Christmas dinner instead of not going. It was that simple. So I asked her, do you want to go? She said she did. I said, look, it's no problem. I'm going to pay for it. So you're going to go. And I did. And I didn't do it with any expectation of reward. In fact, I was in a bad way emotionally at that time in my life because a relationship had ended. And on the evening of the Christmas dinner, I remember feeling particularly sad. And when the fun and games started after the dinner, I wasn't in much of a mood for any of that, and I decided to just leave. And I saw that she was up taking part in the games. And I said to myself, she's here having a good time because of something you did. And I left. And that evening, I just decided to go for a walk. And I was feeling pretty broken emotionally. I was also feeling kind of frustrated with myself because I wasn't able to bring myself to take part. But at the same time, there was this feeling of great well-being and inner tranquility that I suppose I kind of thought of this. I thought of this as kind of like, this is real spirituality now. This is the real thing. And you know, in the Bible, not that I quote the Bible very much in a positive light, but isn't there that verse in the New Testament somewhere where it says, what is true religion, or true religion is, and then it gives a definition. And it's not some fancy theological thing. It says something like true religion is to visit widows and orphans in their distress, or something like that. It's a practical thing. It's looking out for people who are in need of help and helping them. I'm also reminded of the scene in the New Testament where Jesus gets down on his hands and knees and starts to wash his disciples' feet. And they're all like, "What are you doing, Master?" And he's basically saying, well, I'm showing you how you should be with others. I'm showing you the way it is. It's not to do with power, position, authority. It's just to do with helping your fellow man, being of service to others, even in the lowest of things. Now, how often have you ever been to a church and felt that kind of atmosphere, that kind of love among the congregation? Something to think about there. But that was a rare moment for me. And I say rare because it's not really characteristic of my life. My life is mostly selfish. That was a rare moment where I felt that I had touched real spirituality. And it had nothing to do with any particular religion. I just happened to be a Christian who was doing this thing. And I didn't do it to get anything out of it. I just did it because I wanted my religion to be real. I didn't want to be play acting at this thing. So in a sense it was duty. But it wasn't duty in the sense of, oh gosh, I suppose I'll have to do this. It wasn't like that. There was something very natural about it. So it wasn't selfish in the sense of, I'm going to do this good thing for somebody so I can get the good feeling out of it. I had no anticipation that there would be any good feeling. The good feeling was just a kind of side effect. So what place has selflessness in our lives? What place should it have? Here's what I think. If you are struggling to make ends meet, you have every right to be selfish. It's what you should be. If we lived in some kind of post-apocalyptic world, or if there's a war broke out, I would have to fight tooth and nail to survive. And I would. But that's not the kind of world I live in. And in me particular, my life has quite a bit of affluence in it. Now, I'm not a very materialistic person, but when my parents died, I was left with a second house, and I was left with some money. Money I do not know what to do with. I could go and buy a flashy car tomorrow, but I have no interest in that whatsoever. So again, that's part of the reason why this subject has been weighing heavily on my mind, because I realize I have an opportunity to do something useful, and I don't really know what to do because I'm affluent and I don't want to spend it on myself. And it's got nothing to do with being a miser. I'm just no longer motivated materialistically in a way that I used to be. And I'm not looking to be some kind of Mother Teresa character. I'm really not. I noticed there's some kind of imbalance in my life where most of my life is selfish. And I realize that it could be another way. I just don't know how to implement it. So when you struggle, you should be selfish. But when you achieve affluence, you should be selfless. Because that seems to be the way our evolutionary heritage, that's the direction that evolution has pushed us. We went to being loners, reptiles, to being tribal animals, to being whole communities and civilizations that cooperate. I mean, I suppose really the only thing I need to do is to just keep my eye open for opportunities to be of service to my fellow man. I mean, they do happen. I mean, there was last year there was a guy whose bicycle had broken down, and I happened to have a spare bike in my garage. So, you know, the thought occurs to me, hey, well, I'm keeping that bike there for spare parts for my main bike for when I need spare parts. But then I just realised, look, Darryl, just stop it. There's a friend who has no transport. You need your bike, give him your bike. So I gave him the bike, not begrudgingly. Gave it because I could, because I didn't need it. You know? That has to be what it's about. You know, it's insane to have a load of money and to want more and more and more and more, to be totally greedy for gain. And there are people like that in the world, aren't there? It's a crazy way to live, because you just get more and more and more and you can't possibly spend it, and then eventually you just die with it. Madness. And I think a completely selfless life is also mad, because you end up probably exploited by other people. And you end up maybe not being able to take care of yourself. So there's a kind of balance to be found somewhere in between the two, where you take care of yourself, and if you can, you take care of others too. And I think the reason why we feel so good when we do something selfless is because of the word selfless. Think about what that word means. Selfless. Without self. I believe in non-duality. That is, that nothing is really separate from anything else. There is no little man in here driving this human organism. There's no soul in here. This is just the universe. And it's focused in here, and it's focused over there, and it's focused over there. But the thing that is here, staring out of these eyes at you, is the universe. And the thing that is staring out of your eyes into your computer monitor at me is the universe. There's no self except the universe. And it seems to be, if you believe, you know, these spiritual teachers that you hear, that, you know, when you try to meditate and everything, the more you can get rid of the notion of the self, the more you get in touch with blissful states of awareness. But maybe you don't really need to meditate. Maybe a better way to get rid of that sense of self is just to punch right through it by doing something good for somebody and then seeing what happens. When I do something for someone with no thought to what I get out of it, there's no self in the equation. So there's nothing here that has to feel bad in any way. And I think the kind of feeling of well-being that arises is just the natural state of the recognition that there is no self. Now, if my life is suddenly threatened in some way, the belief in a self has to reassert itself, because you have to take care of this particular organism first and foremost, or you die, right? But once you've done that, you need to expand. and recognize that the only true self is the whole universe, really. Not that I'm about trying to save the universe from anything. You know what I'm saying here? Selfless, no self, well-being. And when you're being selfless, you don't worry about, you know, what's going to happen next week? What's going to happen in a year's time? Oh, when am I going to die? What's going to happen after I die? Because there's no self. There's just what's happening here. There's just the universe doing this thing. I don't know if I'm articulating this very well. But I think it's important, and I may have said a bit of a misstep earlier when I said you have to sort of punch on through, because I don't think this is something that you can actually force. I think when you try to force selflessness, that's kind of like trying to turn it into an addiction, or trying to fix a problem when there is no problem to be fixed, really. You know, it's like saying to yourself, well, if I just start to act selflessly, then I'll start to feel good, I'll start to feel better about myself. And then you're turning it into, an addiction. Something to fix an emotional state. It has to happen naturally or not at all. How do you get it to happen naturally? I think it's like this. If you truly believe in non-duality, if you truly believe that the universe is a unity without any parts, without any separate entities, if you truly believe that you are one with the universe and with everything, that belief will naturally manifest itself in selfless behavior. If it does not manifest itself, that is because you don't really believe that. So, how selfless am I? Not that selfless, not really. So, maybe that's a reflection. Not so much that I don't believe it, but that perhaps I don't believe it enough. And I think the only solution to that is further reflection and perhaps meditation, where I come to appreciate what I do believe in a deeper way than I did before. So, I was trying to articulate it. The funny thing is, I've been trying to work this out for the past year or so, and when I looked at the closing, not the closing chapter, but there's a conclusion at the end of my book, I Universe. It turns out that what I've just articulated was pretty much staring me in the face. So I had wrote about it already. I wrote about it ages ago, but it didn't quite click with me in the way that it has now. Anyway, just some reflections on selfishness and selflessness. Your own feedback would be appreciated. Yeah. Bye.